Hello everyone, welcome to DevOps Secrets. On this channel, we will simplify cloud, AWS, DevOps, AIOps, automations by using real world examples and practical scenarios. Today, we are going to answer a very interesting question. Can AI predict a server failure before it actually happens? Can AI fix the problem automatically without waiting for a DevOps engineer? Let's find out. Imagine you have a production application running in AWS and you have thousands of customers using this application. So, in AWS, this user request will be redirected to load balancer and from there it is to EC2 server. I'm just explaining a simple architecture for an example. Everything is running perfectly. So it's 2 a.m. in the morning. Most of your customers are sleeping and even your DevOps team is offline. Suddenly, something starts changing. Your CPU is increasing from 30% to 55%. Nothing looks dangerous. Most engineers would ignore this. A few minutes later, your memory also starts increasing from 40% to 70%. Again, still not critical. Then your response time starts increasing from 100 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds. Your users began experiencing delays. Soon, your application starts throwing errors. And finally, your server crashes. Customers cannot access your application. You will get more support tickets and your revenue is impacted. Now, here is the interesting question. Is it a sudden failure? No. The server was giving signals long before the outage happened. The problem is that we often notice those signals too late. This is exactly where AIOps comes in. So, what is AIOps? AIOps stands for Artificial Intelligence for IT Operations. In simple terms, it combines monitoring, machine learning, and automation. So before going to AIOps, let's understand why our traditional monitoring is struggling and what is the difference between AIOps and traditional monitoring. Traditional monitoring tools collects data and AIOps analyzes the data. Think traditional monitoring tells you something is wrong. AIOps tries to predict what will go wrong. Think in this way. Traditional monitoring is like your fire alarm. It alerts you when a fire has started. AI is like weather forecast. It tells you there is a high chance of storm before it arrives. That's a huge difference. Let's understand why traditional monitoring struggles. Most monitoring tools uses thresholds. For example, CPU greater than 80%, memory greater than 90%, and disk utilization is greater than 90%. Only when these limits are crossed does an alert get generated. But what if your CPU is just 55% and your memory is only 65% and your network latency is increasing slowly individually? These metrics look normal. So, traditional monitoring remains silent. No alert, no warning, nothing. But experienced engineers know something important. Problems rarely start with one metric, they start with patterns. For example, your CPU increased and then your memory increased, your disk activity increased, and later your response time increased. Errors appears, your server crashed. This is one kind of pattern. Experienced engineers can often recognize these patterns. But here is the challenge. Can one engineer monitor hundreds of servers 24 hours a day? Of course not. This is where AI becomes valuable. Now let's see how AI prediction works. Imagine you have an EC2 instance. For several weeks, AI observes this instance and it will learn the normal behavior. So, for example, in normal conditions, your server CPU will be in between 20 to 40% range and your memory will be 40 to 60% range and your response time is around 100 milliseconds and your network latency is 100 Mbps. Sorry, network traffic 100 Mbps. Over time, AI builds a baseline. Think of it as learning the fingerprint of your application. Every application behaves differently. A e-commerce application behaves differently from Netflix. Netflix behaves differently from a banking application. AI learns these unique patterns automatically. Now imagine one day the following happens. So your CPU rises to 55% and your memory starts increasing around 65% and your disk write starts slowly. Response time is increasing. Individually, none of these metrics are alarming. We may ignore them. Traditional monitoring may ignore them. But AI notices something interesting. The exact same pattern appeared before previous outages. For example, in your outage 1, the pattern is increase in CPU, later increase in memory, and then later increase in response time and application errors, and your server crashed. And in the same way, the second outage happened in the same pattern. CPU increased, memory increased slightly, and response time increased. EC2 crashed. And today's pattern looks similar to these two patterns. AI compares historical data. It recognizes similarities. Then it generates a prediction. It writes 85% of chances for your server to crash within an hour. This is predictive monitoring. Notice something important here. AI is not predicting the future magically. AI is recognizing patterns from historical data. That's the secret. Now let's move to most exciting part. Self-healing infrastructure. Traditionally, when a problem comes, it will send an alert and then engineer comes, fixes the problem. This process can take minutes to hours. But with self-healing infrastructure, when a problem comes, AI detects it and it will trigger automation scripts and the problem will be resolved. No human intervention required. Let's look at few examples how this works. When your CPU increased suddenly to 90%, AI detects it and then it will run an automation script which triggers your autoscaling group. A new EC2 instance comes and your traffic will be redirected. Problem resolved. And in some other cases, AI detects some memory leaks which consumes RAM. So, AI detects this abnormal behavior and restarts your server. So, problem solved. In all these examples, the engineer may never need to wake up at 2 a.m. That's the power of self-healing infrastructure. Now let's see how this works in AWS. You have an EC2 instance which generate metrics, and these metrics collects in CloudWatch. So this CloudWatch will be attached to any of the AI model in AWS. So this will learn all your server metrics from CloudWatch. The data is redirected to AI model. Whenever there is an abnormality comes, this AI triggers Lambda function. This Lambda function has an automation script. The script will run, and your problem fixed automatically, and the issue gets resolved. This architecture is already being used by many modern organizations. What about future? We are moving towards autonomous operation. In future, AI monitors your systems continuously, predict the failures, fix the issues automatically, and optimizes your cloud resources and reduce your operational costs. This does not mean DevOps engineers will disappear. In fact, DevOps engineers becomes even more important. Instead of spending hours responding to repetitive alerts, engineers can focus on architecture, innovation, security, and business growth. AI is becoming a powerful assistant, not a replacement. And that's how AI helps predict AWS failures before we notice them, and how self-healing infrastructure can automatically resolve issues. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing to DevOps Secrets. In upcoming videos, we will explore real-world AWS architecture, DevOps automations, and AI-powered operations with practical cloud engineering concepts. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in the next video.